anybody's got anything, we can go ahead and have a meeting.
I do have a question.
You got it.
And this is kind of in a marks thing. When items are, I manually do our mark downloads from Ingram. When I say manually, in other words, I get the marks and then import them into Koha. Do those mark, I can't see the 952 fields, which are basically your item level fields. That has like your home branch and your local branch or whatever, and then whether it's an item or if it has a shelf location or any of those types of things. We have automatic, the A and the B, or our home branch and local branch are the same because we're a small library. Then the item, 99.99% of items from Ingram are items as opposed to kits or something like that. So when I go and look, it says it's on order. The notforloan is a -1, which for us is on order or ordered. Are the others things downloaded from Ingram as part of our setup with Ingram, or is that a setting within the system administration? Because I can't see the 952 fields in my mark records at all. They don't show up. So I've asked for a
can't answer that.
Okay.
So I
George.
can.
Okay.
Hey, George always
So
can answer.
the 2 is the record level item type, collection code, shelving location, and there are other fields in the 942 that relate to the bibliographic record. The 952 fields are the item information, the item record stuff. So with us, you can create a bibliographic record, and you don't get any 952s until you actually add an item to the record. So
when an item is ordered, okay, so let's just say we do an order to Ingram.
So here you're talking about through the acquisitions module, right?
Cataloging. In other words, I go to the I click on cataloging. I go stage records for import. Then I go or Ingram. I have a list in Ingram. I do their little download and whatever the grid, our particular grid is, and that sort of stuff. And I get a 6 or 8 digit number .mrc.
Right.
I import that. I go to cataloging. I click stage records for import. Click that, import that record, choose that record, that MRC file, and watch it do its thing. And then look at the batch, and then look at and then import into Koha or whatever it says, import records, I think is what it says. Then if I immediately go to one of those titles and pull up an item, it's not an item, I guess, yet, but it'll show that it's ordered. Like if I search it in the catalog, it'll show that it's ordered, which is a notforloan -1. It will show that it's part of our library, the 952A and B says it's our library, and the Koha item code is item. It will already say that because we don't have barcodes attached, we don't have anything, but it's searchable in the catalog as ordered. However, every now and then we have items that don't have that, and I get an error message or something. So I've created a mark modification to where I can go in and fill in that information, but I asked for a report. I know I'm going around and around, so I apologize, but I asked for a report to give me all of my bib records so that I could see what is in those record fields. So if I'm looking in the wrong place, instead of 952, I should be at 942 or 245 or something else.
So when you run a report in Koha, unless you're getting data from the biblio metadata table, you're not going to see the 952. The way to get the 952 information is to connect that table to the items table. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you're downloading records from whatever vendor, and that vendor record you're getting includes item information in the vendor record. And some of them don't include the information as others.
Yes.
Or sometimes that item information, that whole 952 is at.
Yep. Let me show you.
Actually, that seeing one would really help me out.
Yeah, give me 1 second. So let me show you the report that Sarah Porter made for me. And I'm just going to give you, I'll put it in the chat real quick. I know it's not going to be formatted correctly.
That's cool. I can format it.
But I added here are the 245s. So I went in and added, basically took the same extract value from m.metadata, datafield, and added lines to put 952 A, B, C, and Y.
Uh-huh.
And it's pulling up no data from, in other words, my report's not giving me any data in those fields. And I know I checked, I have data in those fields.
Well, that I can't help you with because I don't know why that wouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
Extract value and metadata.
So hold on, let me try one. Let me go give you another one real quick.
So what I'm going to suggest is that you don't really need to get the metadata so much as you need to connect it to the items table.
Yeah, but I need to, as long as as long as the items table can still tell me, yes, I guess if an item is ordered but not an item, what I'm trying to find is field item situations, whether it's a bib or whether it's an item, where this data is missed, so that I can go through and fix that in a batch update, whether it's a bib update or an item update.
So what I was hoping you would show me is you would share your screen and show me what one of these items that isn't coming in right looks like, what one of these records looks like in Koha with the problem.
Okay, let me see.
See if you can find one. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead with y'all's business. I'll be listening while I'm seeing if I can find this.
Well, and other people should talk because I'm going to be looking at the report here.
And I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't sure I was going to make it today. And John thought he was going to make it and didn't. So if anybody's got anything, I just know we're still running into a few bumps and stuff with this upgrade. I just did not like this upgrade.
Well, tell us about the bumps and stuff.
Oh, we have errors that you go to load a table and it says error. I think Christopher figured it out, but it's like error. And we got most of them fixed, but it just seemed like we couldn't log in, or we couldn't get to a record, or I'm seeing old fines resurfacing all of a sudden. We don't charge fines.
Uh-huh.
Last 2 days, I've had fines from 2016 and 2013 show up. And it's like, okay, is that part of this goofiness, or is there something else going on? So I don't know, but it just seems like it's just not, there's just too many glitches. in the system. And I do like some of the changes that came about, but it just seems like we run into glitches every day, and it's hard to explain them. I think the majority of them got fixed, but it's like, you know, people can't seem to log into their accounts now. Their passwords aren't working, and you know, they were fine before the upgrade. Now they can't log into Libby, or they can't log into their account. And we have to go in and change the password to, you know, one that Christopher hates, but I just changed it to 1234 because it's easy and the patron can then go in and change it. But you know, it's just little things like that that just have been wonky. Yeah. I think
If
the
we have
majority
had
of them. Oh,
if
go
we
ahead.
have had similar problems, they have not been reported to me.
Yeah. I know some others were mentioning that there were some problems when we upgraded. But I think the majority of them have now been fixed. But it was like, man, I was putting out fires right and left when we got that upgrade. It was one of the biggest glitches we'd had in a long time.
The issues we had that I had were all related to custom code that we had that broke.
Oh yeah.
Because of all of the changes to Bootstrap.
We had
it's nice that that Koha is more compatible with. It's got a more fuller use of Bootstrap, but
we had issues with especially like our holds. We would pull our holds queue to go pull the holds, and we had 10 of the same title, same barcode, same, I mean, it was everything. So it was like it kept duplicating the information, and that happened for a good week or more after. And I think it's been fixed. That's only happened once or twice since. But it was like, good night. You know, it said we had 100 holds, and you go in to look, and it's like, no, we only have 5 because the other one, you know, duplicated on itself. And so it just seemed like this one threw a lot of issues at us.
I rewrote the query that you sent, Wally, but it won't fit in the chat box. So give me a minute on that. Did you find an item?
I did. So can I share my screen real quick?
You should be able to, I think. I don't know.
All right, hold on a minute. Here. All right, can you see it?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so I have a report that is bibs missing the 942C line. So if I click on this and view the record, obviously you'll see that it's not for loan, it's ordered.
But there is an item attached.
There evidently is. So hold on a minute. Let me go to this item. Yes, I have an item. So that's there. And it shows Koha item type as that. However, if I go into the mark, there's no 942. And if I edit the record and go there, none of this data is here. In other words,
Okay.
so like C is not there. Do I need to have something there, or is it the 950? What is causing my errors?
So what exactly are the errors?
I think it's that. Let me go back and think a minute. I think it's it's not showing up in the catalog, but it's not showing up in the catalog, but it's in the staff interface. I think that's right.
Well, you should be able to test that pretty quickly if you click on cancel to the right there, right
here?
underneath Steve Martin's name. Yeah. And that'll take you back to the bib, and then just go to OPAC preview. Open in Yeah, that one.
Yep, and it's there. All right, so, and it says it's on order, so that's fine. So this is good. I wish I could come up with when I've had the actual error.
Can you search, if you search for Steve Martin's writes the written word, does it come up as a search? Is it searchable in your Aspen?
Yep.
Yeah, it's right there on top.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't know what my error is because I haven't had it recently. But I was trying, I guess in my where I'm going with all it said I was trying to understand whether when we get an item in and we change and we put in that it is an item, and let's just say we order from Amazon and we manually put the item in, we get a bib from was it 230, what is it?
Z3950.
Yeah, Z3950. And then we add an item. Is it going back? Is when we update the item, when we edit the item, does that push data back to the mark? Or is the mark always
Yes.
Okay.
So the mark record is stored in the biblio.metadata table, and the information in the mark record populates the biblios table, and if there's item information, then it populates the 950 in the 952. That's what populates the uh, the items table in Koha. So if you bring in a record and it has information in the 952, when that record gets loaded, Koha will build an item record based on what's in the 952. And if you update the items table in Koha, like if you go in and edit something in the items table, then Koha will conversely map that to the mark record in the biblio metadata table. So my guess, if you're actually adding items when you're downloading records, it's because your vendor is providing some basic item information in the 952. And when you load that mark record, Koha is using the information in the 952 to populate that table in Koha, the items table.
So what's the difference between the 952 and the 942?
So the 942 is the item level, is the record, bibliographic record level information. And in our system, that includes the 952, I think it's E, or 942E, if I remember correctly. I can pull a record up and look. That's the easy way to remember it, is to just look at a record and remember what they are. And I happen to have a record bookmark, so I can find one quickly. So we have our mark configured so that 952, the 2 subfield is the classification, E is shelving location, C is item type, H is collection code. And then we also have custom added the Y and the W. And we have the W set up so that when somebody modifies a record, or what the person that creates a record manually from scratch is the W, and the most recent person to update it, we store that in the Y field, just so that we have a link back to who created the record and who updated it last. And so that's at the bibliographic record level. And then each item, and so we can call something, we use shelving location to distinguish adult, children's, young adult. And so we can have something where somebody brings in the record and they call the bibliographic record adult, but then the items can be wherever they circulate, wherever they are in the library. And then the same is true with item type and collection code. is that we set those in one way for the record level, and then each library can choose how they set the individual items. And the advantage of that is if you have something like an example would be maybe Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. The bibliographic record is set probably to adult, item type would be book, collection code would be fiction. But then maybe one of our libraries says that this is a children's book. The item type is new book, and the collection code is the children's special collections by the bathroom on the third floor or whatever. And what the advantage of this is that when you search for something and you limit by collection code, the record level collection code and the item level collection code both become searchable in Koha. So if you search for all the books, if you search for all adult book fiction, that record will show up in that search. And then if you search for children's fiction shelved behind the bathroom on the third floor, that will the same record will show up in both searches. Does that make sense? You're muted, so
Sort of.
you're nodding your head, so I'm getting the impression that it's probably a
That makes
satisfactory answer.
yes. So can I have a one bib record that has two different item types?
In the 942, no.
Okay.
But the 952s can be all over the place.
All right. So again, explain the difference between 942 and 952.
942 relates to the bibliographic record, and 952 relates to the item record.
Got it. Okay.
And
so that's why I can't see in my MARC records, I can't see the 952 because I go into the actual item to be able to see that.
exactly.
Okay. All right.
And
Now I got it.
and all of the circulation rules follow what's in well, actually there's a system preference that lets you, I think there's a system preference that lets you specify whether the circulation rule follow the 942 or the 952.
Okay.
And we have ours set to follow the 952. They follow the item.
I think we do too.
Most libraries do, because that way you can, especially if you're in a consortium, that way the circulation rules follow the item. And there's 3 settings for circulation and how the rules are applied. The rules can follow the library that the rules based on the library that owns the item. And when I worked in Idaho, that's the way we had the consortium we were in set up. So the item comes from, and it's hard on patrons, because what would happen is you could have a patron come into the library in Troy, Idaho, and they're picking up a book. One book they've requested is from Moscow, one's from Lewiston, one's from Prairie River Library District, and the one from Moscow will check out for 3 weeks. The one from Lewiston will check out for 2 weeks, and the one from Prairie River will check out for 30 days. And so, and then if you add in other items, like videos and other things, you can end up with a patron going home with 5 different things, and each one of them has a different, they're all books, but they all have different due dates because they're all from different places. And that's really confusing for patrons. Mm-hmm. And that's why here at NEKLS, we do it so that the circulation follows the rules at the library where you're checking things out. And that's a lot easier on patron, because it doesn't matter where the book comes from. If it's a book, they all follow the same rules.
Yeah.
And then there are other libraries that I've talked to people that work at libraries in India in particular, where the rules follow the person that's checking them out. So the rules follow the patron. So whatever the rules are at the patron's home library, those rules apply no matter which library they go to in the system. And that would really that'd probably be the easiest on patrons, but it would confuse the hell out of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a few libraries. I've talked to a few people that work in libraries that do that. So
That's very helpful. Thank you.
sure.
Anybody else have anything? I'm sorry, I did not come prepared today. I honestly didn't think my meeting was gonna end early enough for me to jump onto this, so I wasn't prepared. I do apologize. All I can tell you is we're cruising along and we're getting into that time frame where it's getting busy and we're doing a lot of cards and a lot of checkouts. And so far things seem to be running. I'm kind of excited. We're going to start running the koha self-checkout hopefully today. That's what I was working on with Christopher just before this one. And so I'm kind of excited for that. It's a prettier version of what we have, and I think it's a little more user-friendly. So we're going to set that up and start using the self-checkout. My tech guy's going to come over because I don't have a keyboard. And he's got one of these cool little fancy tiny little keyboards that he just plugs the dongle in and he's able to do it. And just get it set up as just basically a link. And it just, you log in, you scan the card, brings up this nice pretty screen. And so I'm excited to start using it. I actually heard about it at last month's CIN meeting or CIRC meeting. And immediately jumped on with Christopher and said, hey, is anybody doing this? And are they liking it? So I'm excited to try that.
Has that changed much in recent months, years? I mean, we only just went live with Koha and we implemented the self-check in the last like a week ago or so. I'm just curious, like, is that something that's been just there for a while? They've been actively developing it?
I don't know that they've been actively developing it, but I know it right now we just have one that's, just a full screen that you just say checkout and it comes up to a little box and you check out all the items. And this one is going to look a little prettier. So this one we've been running honestly since we started Koha in 2012. So we haven't updated anything. I didn't even know they had a self-checkout. So wasn't even aware of it until the meeting when everybody was talking about it. And it's like, wait a minute, what self-checkout are you talking about? So I think it just must have come about in either the latest upgrade or the one before, because I didn't even know about it.
So here's what I can tell you about Koha self-checkout. Koha has had a self-checkout module since I started using Koha in
Right.
2012.
Mm-hmm.
Coeur d'Alene and the CIN libraries weren't happy with the self-checkout system that was built into Koha. So
Mm-hmm.
Christopher at the Coeur d'Alene library downloaded a third-party open source self-checkout system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what most of the CIN libraries have been using for a while now.
Right.
But it's an open source third-party self-check system that hasn't been maintained. The original author kind of stopped maintaining it. And so Christopher has kind of become the only developer participating in that open source project. And it runs on a individual PC that's running WAMP. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with WAMP. It's a way of setting up a Windows, Apache, Linux, MySQL system on an individual computer, and WAMP runs like as a virtual server on your machine, on your PC. So what Christopher did was he took a bunch of old PCs that were in the junk pile 12 years ago when they started using Koha, and he installed WAMP on these and put touchscreens on them and barcode scanners and set this third-party self-check system up for the Coeur d'Alene libraries and the other libraries in CIN as needed. And what's happened in the last year or so is that WAMP has become difficult to maintain on these computers. And when he recently had a computer that broke down and needed to be completely replaced, he decided to take a second look at self-check in Koha, the built-in self-check module. And he and I just recorded a video yesterday about the changes that he has made to the built-in self-check system. And that video is going to be released, I think, in 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I'm not sure. He'll do the editing on it and get it all put together as part of our Thursday video series. And we talked about it after we recorded it. We said maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to just revisit, to do a video about how to turn on Koha's built-in self-checkout system and how to turn on Koha's built-in self-check-in system. And Wally's raising his hand. No, it's for somebody else there in the library. Okay. So anyway, I think we're going to do a video sometime soon about just how to turn on the basic self-checkout system and the basic self-check-in system. But what Christopher has done is what he found is he set up the Koha built-in self-check system on a computer at their library to replace this one that he didn't want to reinstall WAMP on. And it just had the Koha built-in self-check interface, and nobody was using it because the other one is just easier to use.
Right.
So what he did is he wrote a bunch of CSS and some jQuery to make them look identical so that they're both easy to use, including putting in an on-screen. At his library, at least, they're using touch screens. So it's got a keyboard built into it that he added with using some jQuery or some JavaScript, so that it's got a built-in touchscreen keyboard, and it's got just a different interface. And he overcame a problem with the Koha built-in self-checkout system. Koha has a system preference that allows you to automatically log in so that you don't have to log in the self-checkout system. So that when you just turn on the computer and go to that website, it auto logs into the self-checkout system. The problem with using that in a consortium is that if you've got 49 different libraries like we do, then you're in a situation where all of that, you can't use the auto login, because whatever home library the auto login has, that's the circ rules that you're going to follow with all self-checks. And all of the self-checks in the self-check system will follow those rules, and they'll all be statistically gathered at that one location. And if you've got 48 locations, 49 locations, you can't do that. And so what he did is he worked with Bywater to set up some things at Apache so that there's a separate self-check login for each location. And they all use the same password, which is in the Koha system preference. He's just got this set up so that whatever location you're at, it's using that location and the default self-checkout password. So no matter where you are in CIN, when you go to that self-check site, if you go to the one that says Coeur d'Alene and then with the Coeur d'Alene becomes a prefix on the URL, and so Coeur d'Alene and then the self-checkout URL logs you into Coeur d'Alene. Benoit County, and like at whatever library, Plummer is one of their libraries in Benoit County. When you go to Plummer and you go to plummer.cin. whatever the self-check log URL is, then it logs you into the Plummer self-checkout and so on. And so that he had to have help from Bywater to set up.
That's interesting, because we just went live with ours, and I guess that's one of the options they offered us, but there was an implication we would lose, and the reason I didn't go with it was there was an implication we would lose the ability to modify I think the CSS and jQuery for each, and so that's why we didn't go with it.
I think it was the same CSS and jQuery at all locations.
I didn't know for a while that they had this new built-in version. And Christopher originally said when we were testing it that we couldn't get stats for our library, which was kind of a a deal breaker. We
Yeah.
couldn't use it. But he was, like you said, George, he was able to fix that. So we were able to get that set up, and I'll be setting it up after the meeting, get it set up and going. But I'm excited to start using it.
See, I have it set up at several libraries, and the way we do it
Mhm.
is we just don't do the auto login. When you get to the
Yeah.
library in the morning and turn on the self-check machine,
hmm
somebody has to go out and log in the self-check machine to this with the staff
Oh, yeah.
account.
Yeah.
And then this is mostly at our public schools. Then somebody can come in and use their
Mhm.
card to check things out.
Yeah. As far as I know, he's got it set so I can get stats on it.
Yeah, and that's because of the work that
Yeah.
they did with Apache.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did a little bit of an in-between. We didn't want to use the Koha-based auto login. So we
Mhm.
have a separate user for each self-check. On the jQuery side of things, we have like a special like parameter it passes along to, and a special link to facilitate the auto login
Okay.
at each location. And that so that way it's set up with a unique user for each, and et cetera, and a few other things.
I think what really would be best for Koha is if we could, it would take development, but if there was a way to put the self-check auto login stuff and the CSS and jQuery into the same tool now that's doing the HTML customizations, and then because then that way they could be changed on a library by library basis. And then to put the auto login information at like in the library record of the circulation rules for each library. But that would take somebody actually probably paying for development in Koha. I know that right before I moved to Kansas, NEKLS had just paid for the updates that got the self-check user CSS and self-check user jQuery to be separate, because it used to be if you wanted to make changes to the self-check pages, you had to just use the OPAC user jQuery, the OPAC user JS,
Yeah.
and so that was spun off into its own system preferences.
And there's still overlap too. Like I noticed, like I
Yeah.
think the self-check still runs the OPAC jQuery, but
Right.
but you can have an isolated yeah. Well, we definitely went in and made the way our libraries have been working. So on previous ILS, we had like self-checks that were configured pretty much as like super locked down versions of the staff client, sort of jerry-rigged to be you know, they were using Chrome kiosk mode, no
Right.
keyboards, so it worked. It wasn't, you know, ideal in terms of technical security, but like it was very functional. So we already had the machines at a handful of our libraries, so we're just pretty much doing the same thing with Chrome kiosk mode. The only thing we had to really do is by default, uh, the Koha self-check has links to like the Koha community page, and I think in two
Yeah.
different spots. And if you're using like a kiosk sort of situation, like you don't want those to be navigatable. So we had to go in the CSS and sort of block the clicks on those, or else patrons wouldn't be able to get back to the self-check. And little things like that. I'm surprised there isn't, because we added, and we did this with our previous self-check too, added a little bit of jQuery to auto repoint, um, autofocus back to the input box. So if a patron touches the screen, it's not going to mess up scanning the barcode. Like little things like that, just to shore up like the functionality of it.
That's Christopher talks about the CSS or the jQuery he uses to get the focus on, to force the focus on that
I
box.
feel like we were both like not reinventing the wheel, but like working on this like at the same time, unbeknownst to
It could be.
Yeah.
I just threw a link in the chat box.
yeah, I was gonna ask what that was called.
That's
Yeah.
the third party self-check. I think it was just called open self-check or something like that.
I think so, yeah. Because that's what
I
we
don't
had
know.
originally.
I never used it. I helped the Lewiston City Library set it up when we started using Koha, but I never have really used it myself that much.
I think that's what we've been using. We've been using the same thing since 2012, so I'm excited to upgrade.
I'm sure that's what you've been using since 2012
Yeah, I'm
because
sure.
Christopher and I talked about it in 2012 when I was at Valnet.
Yeah.
And the Lewiston City Library used to try and get me to do all their tech support.
I remember.
So even though I didn't work there.
Yeah, but when you're as good as you and Christopher, people want you to help.
And I always tell people I'm not any good at this. I just, when I get to a brick wall, I just bang my head on it until I knock a hole through it. It's not really being good at it. It's just not giving up.
I'm not techie, so I tend to rely on others, but I wish I knew more than, I wish I would have known there was a self-checkout out there and that, I could have been looking at that sooner. I just sometimes feel like I don't always know everything I should know. So does anybody else have anything?
We'll probably have more to say in a few months. We're not we're actually we're a month in tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
it's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
Our lead time on it was switching to koha was pretty short as well.
Mhm.
Like we really only had like 3 months to work with it for the entire consortium.
Really?
So
Yeah. Well, if there's anything that, we can help you with, we're all here, so let us know. We'd be more than happy to,
absolutely.
answer any questions we can.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I came in
No,
super
you're
late
fine.
because I was out at the service desk. But
Uh-huh.
did y'all happen to discuss the first part of this meeting? Have y'all heard anything about the email to text message going away? And do you use notifications via Koha? And what are y'all
Have
doing
not
about
heard.
it?
We use Twilio.
And we are looking at moving to Twilio.
And
Okay.
we're doing the same thing because, yes, my understanding is that the email to text is going, the providers like
Yeah.
Verizon, whatever, are
Yeah.
phasing that out. So
Yeah, so far I
we
know
have
the
actually
AT&T
done
part.
away with the text here. We don't even offer that. It's not as a choice. I still get it just because I want to see when it works and when it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yes, we're looking
And
to move to another third-party source, which MessageBee and Twilio are the two that seems to be preferable among most of the libraries I've polled.
We use Shoutbomb, and we've been pleased with that.
What is that again?
Shoutbomb?
Shout bomb noise.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard of a lot of people using MessageBee.
I've heard of MessageBee a lot. I've heard some Patron Point.
we're using Patron. We had Patron Point with our prior ILS, and we switched it over to Koha. So we're using them for enhanced email notices, certain notices, and then text message, SMS messages. And then we're using Twilio directly for the phone notices via the plugin for Koha.
Oh man. So
Yeah.
you're using Patron Point and Twilio for different notices?
Yeah, well, so Patron Point only does SMS and email, and so for phone notices, we have our own direct Twilio connection, and we're using the Twilio plugin for Koha. For just we're just using it for hold pickup notices via
Okay.
phone. So we
Okay,
had telephony previously, and our
Yeah.
patrons loved it, so we didn't want to discontinue it. So we've had that running for just about the whole month for that.
Okay, that's what I find myself is we're just losing stuff, but we never add anything in. So, and I always called it telephony, and I don't know, but it's anyway. So when you said telephony, I was like, oh yeah, that's how you say it.
I never know if I'm saying anything right, so
Okay.
don't go by whatever I'm saying.
I was like, I I'm glad he said that first, because we had it and then we got rid of that. So we only offered email and text, and now we're losing text. So I was like, am I being a bad library person only offering email now for everything, for all notices?
Ours is right now is all just email, and then when we finally send a bill out, for something that has been completely lost, we do it by mail.
Yeah, same. Okay.
But
Yeah.
we would like to get, because people emails, I'm getting returns on them constantly. I mean, either from them providing us with something that's not accurate, or we get on some blacklist somewhere, and I've had a rash lately of Gmails coming back. Everything else seems to be going through, but text message seems to be the way that most of our patrons would prefer it. And if they want to ignore it, they can ignore it. If they want to click on the link to go to whatever it is that we're sending with more detail, they would like to do that. So hopefully we can move in that direction. Like I said, Twilio and MessageBee have been the two that I've gotten the most feedback on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all very much.
One of the reasons that I'm leaning into Twilio right now is that we want to be able to add the telephonic communication as an option. So it won't just be a replacement for SMS, it'll be
both.
A replacement for SMS, plus you also get this new feature. So and we've also calculated that it's small enough, the cost is going to be small enough for us that NEKLS will be able to pay for it on behalf of our members instead of having to pass the cost on to them.
We're pretty happy with the phone notification. The feedback we've passed along to like Bywater and is that we're hoping to be able to select our because in Twilio directly you can specify which, I mean, if you want to spend extra money you can do AI voices, but even the other text to speech voices you could select them and then you could add like pause this amount of time, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that is burnt into the plugin right now. So like one request we had is like, hey, can we like customize it further, just send our own Twilio stuff through it. But other than that, it's been pretty good. I think the biggest thing now with Patron Point, and I mean, this has to be the same for the rest of the external notices, is just the lack of API calls in Koha to actually write like notice updates into the Koha notices tab. So we're trying to we had that with the previous ILS, but like we're trying to at this point let's like remind staff only phone notices and checkout emails. It's a handful of things are going to appear in that tab for patrons, whereas
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Email, hold pickup note, like none of that's going to be in the notification logs for the patron because they're, as of this current version anyway, there aren't any API calls to actually write that into the to Koha.
Oh, I really like having that. Like I love, patron, you received but you could go into Patron Point and say, it looks like you read this email at 6:30 or whatever. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, we can do that on the consortium level. We haven't provided.
Your staff can't do that from the service desk, or.
We do have certain emails that go to the circ desk for like bounce reports.
Yeah.
When an email balances and stuff like that. There's a lot of additional fleshing out that could be done in terms of optimizing workflows and so forth. But a lot of it is just, lack of API calls one way or another, and
Cool.
So quick question. So in any of these, can you follow through to know whether a message was sent, or that, in other words, in MessageBee and Twilio, does it feed back to Koha, or do you have to go into those at all, or into them individually to your provider, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, your service? Can you get something from that?
I can only assume for everybody else it's the same as Patron, because like I said, there's no API calls for that to be entered into Koha. At least like we're hosted, we're not so we can't shell out like SQL access to anybody, you know, like a third party, to write that in. So in fact, the APIs also, if I recall, yeah, they also can't even read the patron notification preferences. So those checkboxes for I want this notice in this format, et cetera, those aren't returned in any of the API calls that I've been able to find and that anyone else I've talked to is aware of. So there's definitely development on Koha's end for both reads and writes in terms of supporting third-party vendors.
And that's similar to what we experience with Shoutbomb also.
What we're essentially doing for SMS notices is if you have your Koha, because you know Koha has that separate SMS notice, SMS phone number field. If that's filled out, you're opting into those notices because like you can at least read that via API. And then I'm actually trying to recall how we have it. Like I guess if you have your email filled in, you're getting that notice. Like it's you know, it's a little limited in terms of even, you know, in terms of reading those patron preferences. And then obviously phone notices are built into Koha, so it follows that, you know, because it's not separate, but.
Cool. Thank you guys for letting me sneak in that question.
No worries. We are only about 2 minutes left, so if anybody's got anything else. If not, we'll definitely see you next month, and John and I will be a little more prepared with an agenda. Like I said, I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the meeting, so he was supposed to run it, and then he had to cancel, but didn't send out enough time, so I was able to jump on. And thank you, Wally, for the reminder.
No worries. Thank you. We were just kind of
You
all
bet.
staring at each other.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Like I said, I was in setting up the self-checkout, which is why I was late. So,
Sounds good.
so
See
thank you
everybody
all.
later.
Bye, guys.
all right,
care.
we'll see you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye-bye.